Hello, welcome to English 3010. I wanted to go over a few tips for taking 3010, specifically for taking 3010 online. 3010 is an intermediate composition course, and so therefore it's very fast-paced. It's more difficult, obviously, than some other writing courses you may have taken because it's an intermediate composition course. And it's also a course in which you're going to be asked to write and research for your specific discipline. And so you're going to be reading and researching and writing in genres that you've not done before. And so this is going to be somewhat of a learning curve for you, but hopefully very beneficial for you in the future. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is that taking an online course can be somewhat inauthentic in that a lot of the things that we would do in a classroom are somewhat eradicated or become somewhat of an isolated task for students. And this course, and in particular all online courses, require the student to be very much on top of their own schedules, very much on top of what is required of them, and to be very persistent about reaching out to the instructor when they're not understanding material or if they're experiencing difficulty with assignments. It's kind of on you to figure that out. That being said, I've created one conference that is required per project so that we get to meet as individuals, and that can happen either in person or it can happen via Skype or via Google Hangouts and Google Documents, which is most useful for students because we can kind of get into the document that you're writing, kind of manipulate it together, and work on it in that way. So that's something that you want to keep attention to. That's something that does give you points for completion. And hopefully meeting with me will then also kind of open up avenues of discussion and make it easier for you to reach out to me and meet with me in person or online, other than just through the required conferences that we have for the course. I kind of want to go through the course and the assignments in general and let you know that each assignment links together, and that each assignment has built-in kind of mini steps that get you to the final project. I have this set up this way so that I can kind of intervene and say, hey, I'm seeing that you're kind of working on this project, but it's not following the assignment guidelines, or it's not appropriate for what this assignment is asking. It allows me to provide you with a fair amount of feedback that you can use to revise and to add on to your projects. And it also kind of allows us to have kind of a dialogue, even if it be only through email and through my feedback to your writing. Because, we're always told that writing is a process, but in most cases, students are not provided with that process. They're not provided with low-stakes writing assignments that allow them to revise and build on their ideas. So that's kind of the point of these projects. So project 1 is a quick description, is going to ask you to interview professionals in your field, as well as the field-specific librarian that we have here for each field at Wayne State University. And that's to get you to understand what is your field about, what does your field privilege when it comes to knowledge, what does your field expect when it comes to research and writing, to give you a sense as to what it means to be a professional in this field, and more importantly, what it means to be a researcher and a writer. Once you've gained that information, Project 2 is going to ask you then to go and look at some of that published research that professionals in your field produce and investigate that writing and see, well, what's going on here? Like, why do they not have a narrative kind of voice? Why are they very systematic, and why do they use a lot of charts and graphs and equations in their writing? Why is it that they don't have very large introductions for the sciences, whereas the humanities, has very large introductions. It's very fluid, and it's, kind of very much like audience driven, whereas the sciences is very cold and systematic. So we're going to be investigating writing for your field to see, well, how is it that the knowledge that's privileged and the way that people think about ideas in the field, how is it represented in the ways that they write? And so you're going to analyze the structure of writing more so than like what's actually being said. So the content, the arguments themselves, the specific arguments of the articles that you're going to be researching are not as important, are not the focus, but rather how is the structure, how is the systematic genre conventions of those articles indicative of the way that your field thinks and researches and writes. Once we've investigated that, then we're going to begin our own attempts at writing the way that your field writes. And I'm not going to expect that you're going to be professionals at that. I'm not going to expect that you kind of have a clue. That's why you'll see that the assignments, have quite a few steps built into them at that point. But rather, you're going to practice this. And my hope is, and assumption is that by the end of the semester, you'll demonstrate a fairly basic but, good representation of how one researches and writes in the field. So the third project is going to be a review of the literature where you find sources and you synthesize those sources and you combine those sources to try to make some type of research claim or argument that is valid for your field. And when I say valid, this is something that your field should privilege and find important, but it should be a topic that is manageable for you. So it should not be a topic, if you're interested in genetics, it shouldn't be a topic like I'm going to look at the chemical reactions that happen on the alleles and the chains of the DNA and talk about how that produces aging in the body. Are you able to analyze those equations? Are you able to read research that talks about that type of research in a very specific formulaic way that only professionals that have been in the field for years understand? Probably not. Would you be able to do some research on, say, whether or not Alzheimer's is in fact a genetic disease, or if it's in fact influenced by outside factors such as one's, mental capacities, physical, so forth, influences, and kind of talk about that in a more general sense and how genetics does or does not play a role in that disease? Yeah, you could probably do that. So, of course, conferences are going to be very important when we go forward in these assignments because, you may have ideas and I might say, that's good, but let's kind of move back a little bit. Let's talk about how we could do this in a way that's going to be, useful and on the level that would work for you at the place that you're at right now. Project 4 is going to build on Project 3. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that literature review that you wrote that you've probably never written before, and you're going to revise it. And you're going to add on to that literature review an introduction to this research and research question. So by then you'll have hopefully a very clear idea of like, this is my research question. This is what I'm trying to argue or find out or expand upon. And then also a proposal to how one might expand that research or how one might, change or think about that research in a different way. For instance, some people have suggested particular types of research studies that are similar to prior research studies but have some change or difference in them. Other people have said it's really important that this new idea is disseminated to the general public, and they create kind of like informational brochures. There's various different ways to go about that. So again, that's important to make sure that you meet with me for that. And then the final is going to be a reflective essay. If you've taken 10, 10, or 1020 here, you've had one of those reflective essays. It's one of those, here's what I learned in this course. Here are some of the, assignments or the group work or my interactions with my professor or others that I've met as mentors that have helped me along the way. Here's how I've changed my way of thinking about research and writing, and how it's not just one type of writing that's good, but rather the writing is always dependent upon its use and what people expect from that writing. All right, so Blackboard. Blackboard's going to be very important. Obviously, this is an online class. All of the materials are on Blackboard. You'll see that I have all the materials in very specific folders. I have the assignment folders, and each assignment has its own particular folder with all of the materials that you're going to need for that particular project. It's going to have all of the handouts that you would need. I have student examples as well as typically examples of the mini assignments that I'm asking you to do. These aren't to be replicated per se, but they are used as templates, as an idea, as to get a sense as to, okay, this is what she's expecting of me. This is the type of genre, the type of structure that she wants me to follow. Student examples you should take with a grain of salt. Some of them are great, amazing examples. Some of them did something really great and something's not so great. And it's your job to kind of figure that out or talk to me about like, hey, I see that the student did this. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Is that, something that I should be doing, or, is that something that I'm right thinking it's not, following the assignment outcomes. And you'll see that there's also folders for each assignment that you need to submit through Blackboard. Automatically, it is placed through the Safe Assign database system, so be aware of that. I typically use Safe Assign to see the types of revisions that you've done, because as you'll see, for each project, you are asked to revise and add on to the mini assignments that I provide to you. I can clearly see when you say submit your third draft of the literature review, the percentage of which you've actually edited or changed. So if you submitted to me draft 3 and it shows that only 2% of it has been altered, that's clearly an indication to me that you've done absolutely or close to no revisions whatsoever. And I'm going to shoot it back to you and say, I don't accept this. So keep that in mind. I'm going to use that. Of course, it's not been very often that I have students that plagiarize, but I use it primarily to see, what are you doing with your revisions? Are you responding to my feedback? Are you addressing the issues that I'm asking you to address? And I can see that very clearly. So keep that in mind. Trying to think. As I mentioned, we're also going to have reading responses. And so those reading responses are going to be one-page, single-spaced, and they're going to respond to all of the readings that are assigned for that week. So you might be thinking, well, how in the heck am I supposed to respond to, say, 3 different texts in one page? The way you're going to do that is by picking out a particular theme or concept or topic that you found to be uniform across the readings, or something that really stood out to you across the readings. When I was in graduate school, we would routinely have for each class about 400 pages that we had to read and then do a one-page single-space response to. And I used to think, when I first started, like, oh my God, like, how am I going to talk about all the things in one page? Well, you can't. And even when we start to do research and you're finding sources, you'll find that not all your sources have information where you will take everything from that article and use, but rather it's got little pieces of like information that you have to glean from it. And so that's what you need to start practicing, and that's what we're going to be doing with the reading responses, is like, what is one kind of main focus or overarching theme that I'm going to use and talk about. So your first paragraph is going to be a summary of that concept or theme, along with a clear thesis statement. So I need to hear you say, I'm going to investigate